Breathe, Callie. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The nurse's voice tried to be soothing, but urgency cracked through. Callie's eyes darted to the doorway. Still empty. Still no Damon. She had begged him not to leave. Begged him with tears in her eyes and fear in her voice. But Damon had tucked his designer cufflinks into his jacket, scrolled through his phone and said casually, "Don't overthink it. You'll be fine. I'll send someone." Then he was gone. No kiss. No goodbye. No father's hand to hold. Another contraction hit, harder than the last. Callie screamed, "Welcome to Love and Twilight with Dr. Phillips, the space where love stories meet wisdom and twilight moments shine with meaning. If you're here, it's because you believe in connection, in healing, and in the magic of relationships that transform lives." Before we dive deep, make sure to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a heartbeat. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what love means to you. Together, we'll explore, share, and grow through every twilight of love. Nurses adjusted machines. Monitors beeped. The hallway outside buzzed with hospital life. Inside room 207, it was a war zone, and she was losing. "Where is he?" she whispered. No one answered. They didn't need to. He wasn't coming. Tears pooled in her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry. Not now. Not in front of strangers. She couldn't let herself break. Not again. But when the pain sharpened, when her whole body seized, she cried out, not just from labor, but from heartbreak. That was when the door flung open. A gust of wind shoved it wide, followed by the heavy, soaked footsteps of Dr. Archie Lewis. Rain clung to him like a second skin. His white shirt was plastered to his chest, transparent enough to see the definition of muscle beneath. His dark jeans were soaked to the knee. His presence was massive, tall, broad-shouldered, commanding. But his eyes? His eyes were locked on her. "Where is her husband?" He barked. The nurse hesitated. "He left." Archie's jaw clenched, rain still dripping from his temples. He moved forward, rolled up his sleeves mid-stride, and grabbed a pair of gloves. "Callie," he said, crouching beside her. "You're not alone. I'm here. I've got you." She blinked up at him, confusion mixing with pain. You don't even know me." He held her hand. Firm, steady. "Doesn't matter. I know what it's like to be left behind. I'm not letting that happen to you." The next scream tore from her lips and she nearly buckled, but Archie didn't flinch. "Dr. Lewis, we need to prep for delivery," the midwife called. "Then prep," he replied calmly. "We bring this baby home." Archie leaned in again, brushing damp strands from Callie's face. "You're doing incredible. You're stronger than you think." "I'm scared," she admitted, voice hoarse. "You don't have to be. Not tonight. Not with me here." Her body jolted as another contraction rolled in. Archie stood now, moving beside the midwife. "Contractions are close. She's at 10. The nurse nodded. "It's time." "Callie," Archie said, locking eyes with her. "You ready?" "No," she whispered. "But we're doing it anyway," he replied. "Because that child? She's about to meet the bravest woman in the world." Another push. Another cry. Another heartbeat pounding through the room. Callie's, fast and terrified. And Archie's, calm and grounded. Their hands found each other again, hers trembling, his warm. "Breathe," he said softly. "You're not alone anymore." Callie pushed with everything left inside her. A scream tore through her as the world tilted, a pressure exploded, and the nurse called out, "We've got the crown." Archie's hands were steady. "Callie, just one more push. For her." She clenched her teeth, closed her eyes, and screamed her child into the world. A single cry pierced the room. Shrill, fierce, alive. Callie collapsed back against the pillow. Her chest rose and fell like she'd just run through 1,000 memories in one breath. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "It's a girl," Dr. Ellie announced. Archie's hands didn't shake as he caught the newborn, slick and warm and red and perfect. He didn't blink as he took the scissors and snipped the cord. He didn't flinch as the child wailed into the ceiling. He cradled her as if she were made of crystal, and when he looked down at her, his face softened in a way no one in the hospital had ever seen. He carried her to Callie. "Here," he said, voice like velvet. "Meet your daughter." Callie reached out with trembling arms. Her fingers brushed soft skin, tiny fingers, and a heartbeat against hers. She gasped. She's mine. Archie smiled. She is. Callie's tears returned, but this time they weren't from fear. They were from awe. She looks like him, she whispered. Archie nodded. But she'll never be treated like he treated you. The baby opened her eyes, barely, as if she knew she had arrived exactly where she was meant to. What's her name, Doctor? Ellie asked. Callie looked down, then up at Archie. Willow, she said softly. Her name is Willow. The baby blinked. Archie touched Callie's shoulder. Strong name. For a strong girl. You stayed, she murmured. You didn't have to. He looked her in the eyes. I did. And if you let me, I won't ever leave. An hour earlier, room 207 felt colder, not from the rain outside, but from the man standing by the window. Damon adjusted his watch like he was timing a stock trade. He didn't glance at Callie writhing on the bed. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't ask if she was okay. Her screams had started softly, growing louder as the contractions kicked in. The nurse moved around, checking monitors, placing wet cloths on her forehead. Still, Damon remained in his designer suit, texting. You're not going to sit with me? She'd asked, breath catching. I've got calls, he replied. Board's waiting on me. You'll be fine. Damon, I'm in labor. And, that word, and, cracked something in her. Her eyes filled. I need you here. He turned finally, but the look on his face wasn't concern, it was annoyance. Callie, he said, voice clipped. We talked about this. I told you I don't do hospitals. This is messy. I don't want it in my head before I walk into a presentation. A presentation? She repeated, stunned. Our daughter's about to be born. He sighed, walked over, and kissed her on the forehead. Mechanical, detached. Look, just breathe. I'll have my assistant check in. You'll be fine. You're really leaving? Damon picked up his briefcase and slipped on his watch. This isn't my thing. It never was. Callie's hand clutched the side rail as another wave of pain surged through her. She reached out. Please. But the door had already shut behind him. The silence after he left was louder than the storm. The nurse looked over with hesitation. You okay? Callie didn't answer. She just stared at the space where he'd stood. The man she'd married. The man she'd trusted. Gone. And with him, every illusion she'd held about their marriage crumbled. The nights he came home late, the sudden weekend trips, the cold eyes when she spoke about baby names. All of it had led to this moment. Alone, in labor, abandoned, her body convulsed again, stronger now. Pain sliced through her lower back. She cried out, clutching the sheet. He was supposed to be here, but he never intended to stay. Not for her, not for their child, and that truth hurt more than the contractions ever could. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, Callie braced herself. She wasn't just giving birth, she was being reborn. But not for him, for the child who hadn't even arrived yet, and already deserved more. The storm outside had not slowed. In fact, it thundered louder, like the sky itself was outraged on her behalf. Callie whimpered through another contraction, her hand cramping from squeezing the bed rail. A nurse leaned over to adjust her fourth. Another mopped her brow. But the ache wasn't just in her belly or her spine. It was in her soul. Abandonment dug into her deeper than the labor pain. The father of her child had walked away like she was just another task on his to-do list. She never imagined Damon could leave at a time like this. But he had. Without guilt, without care, she was alone. Until the door slammed open. And everything shifted. Rain gusted in behind a tall, drenched man. His shirt clung to him, soaked straight through. He looked like he'd stepped out of another world, and into hers. Dr. Archie Lewis, hospital legend, trauma surgeon, the man who never flinched, even in operating rooms where lives hung by a thread. But tonight, he wasn't wearing a lab coat. He was wearing jeans, boots, and a soaked white shirt that revealed the power beneath his profession. And his eyes were fixed on her. Who's the attending on this patient? Archie asked, stepping inside. The nurse froze. Dr. Connolly was paged, but he's still in the OR. I'm taking over. Sir, she's in labor. I can see that, Archie cut in. And she's scared, alone, and her BP's climbing. He dropped his wet leather jacket on a chair, walked over to the monitor and tapped the screen. Fetal heart rate's dropping. We don't have time to wait. Callie blinked, disoriented. Who are you? He stepped beside her bed, took her hand. Firm, warm, certain. Dr. Lewis, he said. But tonight, I'm here for you. And I don't understand. You don't have to, he said softly. Just breathe. Let me help. Her lips trembled. My husband left. I know. Her eyes widened. You know? Archie nodded slowly. He walked past me in the hallway, on a phone call, said, and I quote, "Let her scream it out." Callie's breath caught. She tried to sit up. He said that? Archie steadied her with one hand on her shoulder. Forget him. Right now it's just you, me, and her. Her? Callie whispered. Your daughter. She's close. Archie turned to the nurse. Set up delivery prep now. Doctor, Lewis, you're off shift. I said, prep the room. His voice wasn't loud, but it was absolute. Within seconds, the staff scrambled. Machines beeped. Gloves snapped on. Callie winced with another contraction, her scream catching in her throat. Archie sat beside her again. Breathe with me, he said, inhaling slowly. Callie followed. In, out, in, out. Tears streamed down her face. I don't want to do this alone, she choked. You're not. I'm here. I'm staying. And we're going to bring her into this world together. But why? He paused, gripping her hand tighter. Because I couldn't walk past you, he said. Something in me told me to come in. And when I saw you, I knew. I wasn't leaving. Callie stared at him. This man, this stranger, was offering her more comfort than the man she'd trusted for years. Another scream tore from her throat. Archie didn't blink. Instead, he leaned in and whispered, "Push when I say," and hold nothing back. The contraction hit. Archie counted her through it. 1, 2, 3, breathe, push. Callie bore down, crying out, hands trembling. You're doing amazing, he said, brushing her damp hair from her face. She's almost here. I can't, Callie sobbed. You can. You already are. His voice was everything, deep, grounding, intimate. She focused on it, clung to it, and when the pain came again, she screamed with her entire being. Archie didn't flinch. He stood up. I see the head. Almost there. Callie collapsed back, exhausted. Her voice cracked. Please, don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. I don't know you. You don't need to. What matters is, I'm here, now. Another push. More pain. Another scream. And then a cry. A real one. Not hers, but hers. The baby's. A scream that cut through the chaos like a flame in the dark. Callie's body sagged in relief, her chest heaving. She looked up. Archie was holding her baby. Bloodied, pink, wailing, but perfect. He looked down at the child like she was his entire purpose. Then back at Callie, and in that moment, without needing to say a word, she knew. This man had stepped into the space Damon left, and filled it with something stronger. Callie reached out her arms. Archie placed the baby gently into them. Her warmth flooded through Callie's arms, her chest, her broken heart. Tears flooded her eyes again. Her name is Willow. Archie nodded once, a soft smile curving his lips. Then welcome to the world, Willow. Your mama is fierce, and you're safe now. Callie looked up, her voice no louder than a breath. You stayed. He touched her hand again. I did. And if you'll let me, I won't ever leave. The world stood still. Time didn't stop, but for Callie, it slowed. In her arms lay the soft, trembling miracle that had just come from her body. Her daughter, tiny fingers curled, pink lips parted in a breathless cry, eyes squeezed shut. She was still slick with birth, still wet with life, but alive, real, and already demanding attention with the lungs of a queen. The baby cried like she had something to say, something to claim. Callie's chest heaved as she stared down at her. She counted fingers, counted toes, ran her thumb over the soft down of her daughter's head. The room fell away. Machines, nurses, footsteps, all muted, until Archie's voice brought her back. She's strong, he said gently, his eyes watching mother and child as if witnessing something sacred. She didn't even hesitate. Callie looked up at him. You caught her, she whispered. I did. You didn't even flinch. I couldn't afford to. She laughed softly, a breathy sound, half joy, half disbelief. I didn't think I'd survive it. Archie knelt beside the bed again, resting his forearms on the edge. But you did. You fought. You brought her here. You didn't just survive, Callie. You conquered. Callie's lip trembled. She looked down at the tiny girl in her arms again. She's perfect. She's mine, she whispered again, as if needing to hear it out loud. Archie smiled. And she's lucky. Callie swallowed hard. Her body still trembled, drained from the labor. But the moment she met her daughter's eyes, barely open, glossy like stardust, strength returned. She needs a name, said Dr. Ellie from the foot of the bed, checking her chart. Want to announce it? Callie looked from her daughter to Archie, back to her daughter. Willow, she said softly. Her name is Willow. Archie's breath caught. That's beautiful. I used to sit by a willow tree after my father passed, Callie explained, voice raspy. It made me feel safe, like I could break and still grow again. She looked down at her daughter. She made me feel like that. The minute I heard her cry, Archie nodded slowly. That name suits her. Dr. Ellie smiled. Willow it is then. The nurse wrapped the baby in a soft blue blanket and did her checks gently. Wait. APGAR score. Reflex test. Archie stood, still dripping slightly from the storm, and watched like a sentry guarding a queen. Callie looked at him. You didn't have to do any of this. I know. You're a trauma surgeon, not an OB. Archie shrugged. Life has a way of throwing you into places you didn't expect. You didn't even know me. He met her gaze directly. I knew enough. A silence settled. It wasn't awkward. It was thick with meaning. Willow let out another tiny squeal, her lungs reminding everyone she was still very much present. The nurse chuckled. She's already got opinions. Callie smiled through tired eyes. Archie leaned closer to the bassinet. You're going to make a lot of noise in this world, aren't you, little one? Willow blinked slowly, as if considering it. Callie laughed under her breath. I think she already has. Archie turned back to her. Do you have anyone to help tonight? She shook her head. No mother, sister? They all live out of state. Damon's parents. Don't speak to me. I was supposed to have him, but... Her voice trailed off. Archie didn't press. Instead, he pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. I'll stay. At least until you're asleep. You've already done enough. I want to. Callie looked at him, unsure. You barely know me. I know you brought life into this world alone, he said. And no one should fall asleep tonight feeling abandoned. A tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away quickly. I'm not good at asking for help. You didn't have to ask, he said gently. Sometimes, someone just has to show up. Willow stirred. Archie leaned in again, slower this time. Can I hold her? Callie hesitated, then nodded. Archie reached out with surgeon's precision, yet the tenderness was unmistakable. He lifted the tiny bundle and cradled her against his chest. She fit into him like a missing piece. She's light, he murmured. Just 6 pounds. But she feels heavy with something, he added, voice lower. Like she already carries strength. She does, Callie said. She had to. Archie looked down at the newborn. Hi, Willow, I'm Archie, and I promise this world will be a better place with you in it. Callie watched him, his posture, his grip, the way he rocked gently without even realizing it. You're good with her, she whispered. I've never held a newborn before. Callie blinked. Wait, what? Archie chuckled. First time? You're kidding. I've treated crash victims, stitched soldiers, and stood in operating rooms for hours. But this? He looked down at Willow. This feels different. Callie smiled, surprised by how warm her chest felt. Not from the room. Not from the meds. From him. Archie sat still, Willow in his arms, her soft breathing brushing against the fabric of his shirt. He didn't speak. He didn't move more than the gentle sway he'd naturally settled into, his large, capable hands that had held failing hearts and stitched torn arteries, now cradled 6 pounds of fragile life like it was the rarest treasure. Callie watched from the bed, head slightly tilted, eyes red but soft. I've never seen you in the maternity wing, she said quietly. That's because I'm never here. Then why today? Archie looked down at Willow, then back at her. Something told me to walk past the emergency stairs, he said. I usually take the elevator, but tonight I didn't, and when I saw the door open to your hallway, I heard you scream. His voice lowered, and I knew I wasn't supposed to keep walking. Callie's breath hitched. You didn't have to stop. I couldn't not. Willow shifted. Archie adjusted his grip like it was second nature. You're good at that, Callie murmured. He looked at her. Surgery teaches you technique, but this, he looked down at the baby, this teaches you something else. What? That love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, still, unshakable. Callie looked down at her hands. I thought I knew love. He didn't ask about Damon. He didn't need to. Instead, he said, real love doesn't walk out during contractions. Her throat tightened. He stood and slowly placed Willow into the bassinet beside the bed, tucking the blanket gently around her. I've never done that before, he said. What, held a baby? No, held Hope. Callie blinked. Hope? She doesn't know what her father did. She doesn't carry his choices. She came here clean, new, undamaged. And if she's lucky, he turned to her, she'll never feel what you felt today. Callie swallowed hard. I'm sorry you saw that, she said. I'm not, Archie replied, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have known who you really are. She narrowed her eyes slightly. Who am I? Someone who deserves more than silence when she's screaming for help. Willow let out a sleepy sigh, turning her face toward the bassinet wall. She likes your voice, Callie whispered. I wasn't even trying to soothe her. You didn't have to. Archie moved back toward the chair. Willow's going to be okay, he said. You both are. Callie pulled the sheet up slightly, brushing her palm across her own belly where life had once moved. I don't even know where to begin. Archie didn't flinch. Start with rest. And tomorrow? He smiled faintly. Tomorrow, you breathe. She studied him for a moment longer. You came into this room a stranger, and I'm still a stranger, he said softly. But I meant it when I said, I'm here. Callie turned to Willow and back to Archie. For now? For as long as you'll let me. The lights in the delivery room dimmed slightly as the machines settled into rhythm. The storm outside had quieted to a soft drizzle, like even nature was catching its breath. Callie stared at the ceiling, eyes heavy but mind still racing. She'd just brought a life into the world. Alone, but not entirely. She turned her head and found Archie still sitting in the chair beside her bed. His elbows rested on his knees, fingers clasped together, eyes watching Willow through the bassinet's clear shield. You don't have to stay, she said softly. I know. You've probably got somewhere to be. I did, he replied. But I'm where I'm supposed to be. Callie studied him. The man looked nothing like Damon. Damon had always been polished, suited, pristine. Archie looked like a storm had passed through him, but his presence made her feel protected. She shifted slightly. Pain tugged at her lower belly. She winced. He stood immediately. You okay? She nodded. Just sore. I'll get the nurse. No, she said, reaching out instinctively. Her fingers brushed his wrist. Stay. He looked down at her hand on him, then at her. I'm not going anywhere. She let go of his wrist slowly. Why are you like this? Like what? Kind, attentive, gentle. Archie's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened a bit. Because I wasn't always. She blinked. You don't have to explain. I want to. Callie waited. I lost someone, he said. A long time ago. I was engaged once. Her name was Lena. She was 6 months pregnant when a car crash took both of them. The silence after those words was crushing. I tried to save her, he continued. I was the one in the ER. I held the scalpel. I opened her chest. I begged her to stay. Callie's eyes glistened. Archie. He shook his head. I don't talk about it. Not with anyone. But tonight, I walked into this room and saw you, and everything in me said, don't fail her. Tears slipped down Callie's cheek. You didn't. He exhaled slowly, rubbing his hand down his face. She reminded me of what I lost, he said. But you reminded me of what I still have to give. Callie reached toward the bed rail. Come here. He stepped closer. She took his hand. I don't know what's next, she said. I don't even know what tomorrow looks like. You don't need to. I've been left before. I'm not him. She searched his eyes. How do I know that? He leaned in, close enough that his breath met hers. Because I'm not making a promise I can't keep. Then what are you making? He looked at her hand in his. I'm offering something better than words, he whispered. Presence, action, patience. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. He leaned in closer, just enough for their foreheads to touch. Sleep, he whispered. I'll be here when you wake up. 2 days later, the hospital had become a memory. The kind that lingers, not just in the mind, but in the body. Callie sat in a small, dim apartment, lit by the glow of a single lamp. Her feet rested on a footstool. Her body ached, her head throbbed, but her arms were full. Willow slept soundly on her chest, wrapped in the hospital-issued blanket. Her lips parted slightly, her tiny fist curled near Callie's collarbone. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No cries. No soft hum of support. No voice from across the kitchen offering to make tea or hold the baby while she rested. Just Callie. And Willow. She hadn't heard from Damon. Not a message. Not a call. Nothing. But that didn't surprise her anymore. What surprised her was the thick envelope that had arrived with the morning mail. She'd opened it with a newborn resting against her shoulder. Inside, 3 sheets of cold finality. The first was a statement from the bank. Their joint account? Empty. Not low. Not reduced. Empty. Every dollar withdrawn by Damon. The second, a lease termination notice. Their condo downtown was in his name. The third, a notarized divorce packet. Already signed. Already filed. All he needed was her signature. Callie stared at the papers now, her free hand trembling. The pain wasn't just financial. It was soul deep. He'd erased her in less than 48 hours. Stripped her of everything, home, money, identity, as if she were a clerical error to be corrected. She looked down at Willow, still breathing softly. I didn't think he'd do this, she whispered. The baby stirred slightly, then settled again. Callie leaned her head back against the wall and let the tears come. They ran silently. No sobs, no wails, just a steady stream of surrender. Her mind spiraled. How would she buy diapers? Pay rent? Get formula if she couldn't breastfeed long enough? She hadn't even started recovery, and already she was being shoved toward survival. The walls of the apartment felt smaller, the silence louder, until a knock broke through it. 3 short taps. She stiffened. Willow stirred in her arms. She rose carefully, clutching her daughter tightly, and crept toward the door. Another knock. Callie peeked through the peephole and froze. It was him, Archie. He stood in a black turtleneck and dark jeans, rain clinging to his shoulders again like déjà vu. In his hands, paper bags from the corner deli. A hint of steam rose from one of them. She opened the door slowly. You shouldn't be here, she said, voice barely above a whisper. He looked her over, eyes scanning her face, the mess of her hair, the tired rings under her eyes, the baby clutched to her chest. I know. Why are you? He held up the bags. You've been living off vending machine crackers. I brought soup. She opened her mouth to protest but hesitated. He looked past her shoulder into the small apartment. May I come in? She didn't answer. She just stepped aside. Archie walked in quietly, setting the bags on the small dining table. Callie turned away quickly, placing Willow in the makeshift bassinet by the couch. The moment she turned back around, Archie was watching her. I'm fine, she said, folding her arms. You're not. I didn't ask for help. I know. Then why are you here? He reached into the bag, pulled out a container, and set it on the table. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. She stared at him. That moment in the delivery room. I can't get it out of my head, he continued. Your strength, your fear, your daughter's first cry. You broke something open in me, Callie. That doesn't mean you owe me anything. I'm not here because I owe you. Then why? He took a step forward, slower this time. Because I want to be here. Callie's arms dropped to her sides. Her breath caught. You don't even know what you're saying. I do. No, Archie. You saw me at my lowest. You stepped in when no one else did. That doesn't mean... I wasn't being noble, he cut in. I was being pulled. She blinked. Pulled? Like something grabbed my chest and said, don't leave her. Callie shook her head. That's not fair. You're projecting... Maybe, he admitted. But I'm still here. She lowered her gaze. You came here with soup? I didn't know what else to bring. She smiled, despite herself. That's the most real thing anyone's done for me in months. Archie took a step closer. No one should be alone right now. Not after what you just did. I don't even know how to put my life back together. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded white cloth. He offered it. But the tears you won't let fall. She took it slowly. I haven't cried in front of anyone since. He waited. She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she whispered, "Thank you." His voice dropped low. "You're not a burden. You're not broken. You're a mother, and you've already done the hardest thing." She looked at him, chest tight. He reached forward and gently touched her cheek. It was a simple touch, but it cracked something wide open. Callie sat at the edge of the couch, legs tucked beneath her, watching steam rise from the bowl in front of her. The soup smelled like memories, simple, warm, comforting. Archie moved around the kitchen space quietly. He didn't ask questions, didn't hover, just moved like he belonged, even though he clearly didn't. "This place is small," she said, breaking the silence. He looked over his shoulder. "It's peaceful." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a generous word." He leaned on the counter. "I'm not here to judge square footage." She blew on the spoon and took a sip. Her shoulders eased. He noticed. "You haven't eaten properly, have you?" She shook her head. "Been too tired to think." "Let me help you think, then." She gave him a look. "You make that sound easy." Archie walked toward her slowly and sat across from her on the armchair. "I'm not here with a checklist," he said. "I'm just here." She swallowed a bite, then looked down at the soup. "I told myself I didn't need anyone," she said. "Especially after everything." He didn't interrupt. "But when I saw you at the door, holding that brown bag." She paused, meeting his eyes. "I almost cried right then." He leaned forward slightly. "Why didn't you?" "Because if I start again, I might not stop." Archie nodded. "Then let me be the one who stays while you do." Callie's spoon paused midway to her lips. "You say things like that, and it scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't trust people who sound too good to be true." He sat back, resting his arm on the back of the chair. "I'm not perfect, Callie. You're not supposed to be. I've made mistakes, carried grief. I've stayed quiet when I should have spoken up, and spoken when I should have stayed quiet." She looked at him, eyes narrowing just slightly. "But you showed up for me. I'll keep doing that." Callie stared into her bowl. "I don't want Willow to grow up watching me fall apart. Then let her grow up watching you rebuild." A beat passed, then another. "I'm not ready for another relationship," she whispered. "I didn't ask for one." "Then what are we doing?" "We're sitting in the quiet," he said softly. "And if something comes from that, we'll let it." Her hand shook slightly as she placed the bowl back on the table. Willow let out a small sound from the bassinet, just a soft coo. Callie turned her head, smiled faintly. She knows when things shift in the room. She's smart. Like her mother. Callie looked back at him. "You really believe that?" "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." He stood up then, but not to leave. He walked over to her, knelt in front of the couch, and looked up at her. "You don't have to say anything. Not tonight. But if you let me," his voice lowered, "I'll sit with you in every quiet room from here on out." Callie didn't move. She didn't answer. But she didn't look away either. And that was a start. The soft hum of the radiator filled the silence. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside, something else stirred, quiet, building, heavy with possibility. Archie was still kneeling in front of her. Callie hadn't moved. His hand rested gently on her knee, not possessive, not urgent, just there. Present, solid. Willow let out another small sigh in the bassinet, as if giving her approval to the stillness. Callie's gaze dropped to where their skin touched. Her heart beat louder than the room. "You're making this harder," she whispered. Archie tilted his head. "How so?" "Because you're kind, because you say the right things, because you see me. Isn't that what you deserve?" She blinked. "I'm not used to it." His hand moved, just slightly, fingertips brushing over the curve of her knee. "You should be." The space between them charged with something she couldn't name. Not just attraction, not just gratitude. It was deeper, born from hours of shared silence, brokenness witnessed, and the way he'd looked at Willow like she was already his. Callie leaned forward. "I haven't felt this safe in a long time." Archie didn't smile. Instead, his eyes darkened, voice lowering. Then let me be the one place you don't have to question. She leaned forward a fraction more, her breath brushing his jaw. Archie. He raised his hand and touched her cheek gently, thumb brushing beneath her eye. You're exhausted, he murmured. I should be sleeping. I should be gone. But neither of us moved, she whispered. Their eyes locked. Close wasn't the right word anymore. They were suspended, between decision and instinct, between control and surrender. Callie tilted her face up. Archie leaned down. Their lips hovered, just a breath apart. She could feel his warmth, the way his hand had moved from her knee to her waist, the quiet intake of breath that signaled he was just as conflicted. And then he stopped, right there, frozen, not because he didn't want her, but because he respected her too much to take the moment without full permission. Callie's eyes searched his. Why aren't you kissing me? Because you've been through too much today. And if I want you to, then tell me. Her throat tightened. I don't know what I want. Then I'll wait. She exhaled shakily. That's dangerous. Patience is never dangerous, he said. Rushing is... They stared at each other, inches apart, bodies still. Callie's hand moved, slowly, uncertain, resting over his heart. It beat steady, not fast, not erratic, just sure. I've never had this, she murmured. A man who slows down when he could speed up. Archie reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You're worth slowing down for. Her chest rose, fell. The space between them felt sacred. Still, no kiss. But there didn't need to be, because when Archie stood again, he didn't break the connection. He ran his fingers down her arm as he moved, letting the contact linger until the very last moment. I should go, he said, voice thick. Callie nodded. Okay, but I'll be back tomorrow. She smiled softly. Bring more soup? And a smile. She looked down, cheeks flushing. I can handle that. He picked up his jacket, hesitated at the door, and turned. I meant it, Callie. You're not alone. Not anymore. Then he stepped out into the quiet night. And Callie stood there long after the door clicked shut, her hand still resting over her chest, right where his had been. 3 weeks later, Callie stood barefoot in the middle of a high-ceilinged living room overlooking Lake Marston. Floor-to-ceiling windows cast golden light across pale hardwood floors. The water shimmered beyond the glass. Birds chirped faintly in the distance. She still didn't know how she got here. Well, technically, she did. It started with Archie showing up every day like clockwork, with food, with silence, with gentle questions, with time. Then came his offer, a guest suite, he'd said, until you're fully recovered, for you, for Willow. No pressure. Callie had hesitated. Pride told her to say no, but exhaustion said otherwise. And now, here she was, 3 weeks later, standing in a silk robe in a house 10 times larger than her old apartment, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in a nursery Archie had built. In 2 days, literally built. She'd woken up one morning to the sound of hammers. By sunset, a room had been transformed. Soft pink walls, a cloud-white crib, plush animals in every corner. He'd even had her name, Willow, etched into the wood above the door in cursive letters. Callie rubbed her arm, still unsure how to feel. Was she grateful? Definitely. But part of her feared leaning in too far, as if the moment she admitted comfort, the floor might vanish beneath her. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned. Archie entered the room wearing a gray sweater and black slacks. Simple, but on him, elegant. How's she doing? He asked. Sleeping like she owns the place. He grinned. She kind of does. Callie laughed. Don't let that go to her head. He walked to the window and looked out at the lake. She smiled in her sleep earlier, he said. Do newborns even know how to smile? Probably not, Callie replied. But I like to pretend it means she's dreaming of peace. They stood in silence for a moment, eyes focused on the water. Then Archie turned toward her. You've been quiet today. Just thinking about... She hesitated. About what comes next. Where I go from here. How long I'm allowed to stay. Archie stepped closer. This isn't a hotel, and you're not a visitor, but it's your home. And you're not just some woman I bumped into at a hospital. She crossed her arms. I don't want to overstay. He shook his head slowly. You haven't even settled. Callie looked away. This isn't my world, Archie. What is your world then? Struggling with grocery bags while rocking a baby in one arm? I'm used to that. Being used to pain doesn't make it home. His voice was firm, not demanding, but honest. She sighed. You don't owe me anything. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the couch, reached beneath it, and pulled out a small gift bag. What's this? She asked. Open it. She reached inside and pulled out a soft baby onesie. Cream-colored, tiny, but it wasn't the fabric that caught her breath. It was the name embroidered across the chest, Willow Lewis. Callie's eyes snapped up. Archie stood still. I didn't do it to pressure you. I saw it, and I imagined what it would look like if she had my name. Callie's throat tightened. Why? Because she deserves to be claimed by someone who didn't run. Her hands trembled as she held the onesie. And you? I want her to know that even though I didn't give her life, I chose her. Callie blinked away the mist in her eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet. She looked back at him. But you should know this, he added, voice steady. This house doesn't feel full until you're in it. The wind rattled the glass slightly, but inside, all Callie could hear was her own pulse. A home. A name. A man who kept showing up. She clutched the tiny onesie to her chest and whispered, You make it hard not to feel things. Archie smiled. Good. Feeling is how healing starts. It started with laughter. Not the polite kind. Not the careful kind. Callie had made a comment about Archie's overstocked wine cabinet, and he'd replied, A man can only be so lonely before he starts collecting labels instead of memories. She'd laughed harder than she meant to, and when she did, something cracked open between them. That night, Willow had gone to sleep early, her soft breaths barely rising beneath her pink blanket. The monitor glowed quietly beside Callie's arm as she curled into one end of the couch, nursing a cup of warm tea. Archie sat at the other end, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the armrest, gaze fixed on her face. I like you like this, he said. Like what? Unfiltered, relaxed, real. She took a sip. You say that like I was fake before. He tilted his head. No, you were guarded, rightfully so. But now, you breathe differently. I sleep through the night. You trust the roof. I trust your silence, she corrected. It doesn't make me feel small. He nodded slowly. A quiet buzz vibrated from the baby monitor. Just a stir. Nothing urgent. They both glanced at it, then back at each other. Their eyes lingered this time. Callie, he said softly. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. I've wanted to touch you for days, not because I'm impatient, but because I can't ignore what you do to me. She didn't speak. I keep telling myself to wait, to let you lead. But if you give me a sign, any sign, I won't hesitate. The mug slipped from her hand and landed safely on the carpet, still half full. She stood, walked across the room, stopped in front of him. Come, she said. He stood slowly, like a man surrendering to gravity. She didn't lead him to the guest room. She led him to hers. The door clicked shut behind them. The silence inside the room pulsed with anticipation. Archie stepped forward, brushing her hair behind her ear. Are you sure? Her reply was a whisper, shaky but deliberate. Yes. He didn't rush. His lips met hers like he was introducing himself all over again. Slow, curious, intentional. Callie melted into him, her hands gripping his sweater, her mouth opening under his. He kissed her like he needed to know her story without asking questions. One hand found the belt of her robe. He paused. Her breath caught. She gave a single nod. The fabric fell away. His fingers traced her shoulders, her sides, her thighs, mapping skin that had been marked by motherhood, stretched by life, but never worshipped the way she deserved. You're beautiful, he murmured against her collarbone. You haven't seen all of me. He looked her in the eyes. I already have. She pulled his sweater up, revealing sculpted muscles and the steady rise of breath beneath his chest. He let her explore, palms over his abdomen, lips against his neck. Then he lifted her gently, laid her down on the bed, and followed. There was no fumbling, no uncertainty, only connection. His mouth traveled the landscape of her, shoulders, ribs, hips, pausing at every place she'd once hated and now began to reclaim. Callie gasped when he moved between her thighs, his tongue soft and slow, like he was speaking a language her body had forgotten. Her legs trembled. He gripped her tighter. Let go, he whispered. And she did. She shattered beneath his mouth, a cry caught in her throat. He didn't stop. He kissed his way back up, body against body, heart against heart. And when he entered her, they both inhaled, like the air had finally returned to the room. He moved slowly, deliberately, hands cradling her face, forehead resting against hers. Every thrust was a wordless promise. Every sigh, a chapter rewritten. She clung to him, not out of fear, but trust. And when she came again, it wasn't just release, it was rebirth. She said his name like it was an answer to a question no one had dared to ask. He followed, groaning into her neck, still inside her, still holding her like she might disappear. But she didn't. She stayed. And so did he. They didn't speak for minutes. Their bodies were tangled, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing circles down her back. Finally, she whispered, "I needed that more than I knew." He kissed the top of her head. "I did too." She looked up. "What are we now?" He met her gaze without blinking. "We're whatever you're ready for." Callie exhaled. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt like more than a woman healing. She felt like a woman desired, chosen, alive. The morning light filtered through linen curtains, casting soft shadows over skin that hadn't known peace in far too long. Callie stirred slowly beneath the sheets, her body sore in the sweetest way, used not carelessly but reverently. Her eyes fluttered open, and the first thing she saw was him. Archie, sitting shirtless at the edge of the bed, his back to her, head bowed slightly, hands laced together between his knees. She watched him in silence. Muscles traced his spine. There were tiny scars she hadn't noticed before. She wanted to ask about each one, but didn't want to break the moment. Instead, she whispered, "You stayed." He looked back over his shoulder. A slow smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "Of course I did." She sat up, holding the sheet to her chest. Her hair tumbled over her shoulder, still tousled from hours of passion. He reached back, letting his fingers brush her ankle. "I didn't sleep much," he said. "Regret?" He shook his head immediately. "No, just couldn't stop replaying last night." Callie lowered her eyes. "Me too." Archie turned, moved closer, and pulled her hand gently into his lap. "Tell me how you're feeling, not just your body, your mind." Callie considered his question. "Lighter," she said, "like something I was carrying finally dropped off." He leaned in. "You gave yourself permission to be held. I didn't know I needed it. Sometimes we don't." She shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "It wasn't just sex. No, it felt like you were claiming me." His jaw tightened, slightly, protectively. "I was." She looked up. "Say it." He turned, cupped her face and whispered against her lips, "You belong to me now." Her breath caught, not because she was afraid, but because her heart had been waiting to hear those words from the right man. She kissed him again, slower this time, less heat, more depth. When they parted, her eyes lingered on his. "You feel different than anyone I've ever been with." "I better be." Callie laughed softly, so arrogant. He smirked. Confident. She dropped the sheet and climbed into his lap, straddling him slowly, skin against skin. She looked into his eyes. "Then show me again." They didn't rush. This wasn't urgent. It was indulgent. Archie's hands roamed her hips, her waist, her spine, like he was relearning every inch. She kissed his jaw, down his neck, across his collarbone. He guided her down onto the mattress again, their bodies fitting together like an answer. This time, he didn't just touch. He spoke. With his hands. With his mouth. With his rhythm. "You're mine," he murmured, pressing into her with deliberate, steady depth. Callie's fingers gripped his back. He moved slowly, deeply, with the weight of a man who had no plans to go anywhere else. She arched beneath him, moaning his name like a mantra. And when they came, together, it wasn't chaos. It was clarity. Later, she lay against his chest, their legs tangled, the sheet forgotten on the floor. "You're going to ruin me for anyone else," she whispered. "That's the idea." She chuckled, but then fell quiet. "What if this isn't real?" she asked. "What if I'm just broken, and you're trying to fix something that can't be fixed?" He turned to her sharply. "You're not broken, Callie, but I was left. I was discarded like I never mattered." "And he was a fool," Archie said. "But don't confuse what happened to you with who you are." She swallowed hard. "Then tell me who I am." "You're a woman who survived betrayal, birthed a miracle, and still had enough heart left to let someone new in. He kissed her knuckles. "You're not broken. You're whole, and you're mine." Her throat tightened, but this time she didn't cry. She simply believed him, and that was the most healing thing of all. Callie stood in front of the nurses' station at Rosegate Memorial, clipboard in hand, hair pulled into a low bun. It felt strange, being back. Not as a patient, not as a frightened mother, but as a nurse again, part-time. Just a few shifts a week. Archie had encouraged it. Not because you need the money, he'd said, but because you need to remember who you were before the storm hit. She'd agreed, and for a while things felt steady. Until today. She'd just finished giving meds to a patient in room 212 when she turned a corner and froze. He was standing there. Damon. Clean cut. Expensive suit. The same smug grin she once mistook for charm. She clutched her clipboard tighter. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice low but steady. Damon looked her up and down. "You're back on your feet. Impressive. That doesn't answer my question. I came to see my daughter." Callie stiffened. "She's not here." "I know," he said. "But soon she will be, with me." Her heart thudded. "What are you talking about?" He handed her an envelope. Legal-sized. Heavy. Callie didn't take it. He dropped it on the counter instead. "I've filed for full custody." Her world tilted. She forced a breath through her lungs. "On what grounds?" Damon shrugged. "You're unstable, jobless for months, living in a man's house who isn't your husband, who left me in labor. I had business. You've always been dramatic." Her jaw clenched. "You emptied our account. You filed for divorce without a word. You weren't fit to raise a child alone. I didn't have a choice." "You do now," he said, stepping closer. "Sign over custody. I'll give you generous visitation. You can start over." Callie stared at him in disbelief. "Start over?" she repeated. "Like she's a lease I can walk away from?" "I'm being reasonable." "No," she said quietly. "You're being cruel." Damon leaned in, eyes hard. "Archie can't save you, Callie. Judges don't look kindly on mothers who move in with strange men weeks after giving birth. He's not a stranger. He's the reason Willow is alive." "Be that as it may," Damon said, adjusting his tie. "I'm her father, biologically, legally, and soon, physically." Callie's hand trembled around the clipboard. She refused to give him the satisfaction of crying. "You'll lose," she said. He smiled. "We'll see." And with that, he turned and walked away, his polished shoes clicking down the hall like punctuation marks of threat. Later that night, she clutched Willow to her chest in Archie's living room. Tears streamed down her face, silent and hot. Archie knelt beside her, one hand on her thigh, the other on her back. "I can't lose her," she whispered. "You won't." "He's serious, Archie." He filed. "There's a lawyer. There's paper. I'll hire better ones." She shook her head. "He knows the system. He'll twist everything." Archie leaned in close, voice low. "Let him come. Let him try. He won't win." Callie buried her face in Willow's blanket. "She's all I have." Archie took her face in his hands and lifted her gaze. "You have me." Callie sat on the edge of Archie's bed, arms wrapped tightly around her, knees, wearing one of his black t-shirts that fell halfway to her thighs. Willow was asleep in the nursery down the hall, unaware of the storm gathering outside her door. The room was quiet, but her mind wasn't. "Say something," she whispered. Archie stood near the window, his arms crossed over his chest, muscles tense, jaw locked. When he finally spoke, his voice was gravel. "He wants to take her." Callie's throat tightened. "He won't stop until he does." Archie turned, eyes burning. "Then I won't stop until I make sure he never gets the chance." She blinked. "You'd fight him for me?" He crossed the room in 3 steps and knelt in front of her. "I would burn every bridge, hire every attorney, file every motion. I'd stand in front of a judge and testify until my voice gave out. I don't care what it takes. He's not touching her." Callie's chin trembled. "He's her biological father. I don't care whose DNA she carries. He wasn't there when you screamed through contractions. He wasn't there when she took her first breath. I was—" Her fingers trembled against her knees. "He'll use that against me, say I gave my child to another man. Then, let him," Archie said, "because I'll stand up and say I took in the woman he abandoned. I fed her, protected her, loved her child like my own." The word slipped out before she could stop it. "Loved?" He stilled. Callie's eyes met his. "Do you?" she asked, barely breathing. Archie didn't hesitate. "Yes." Her voice shook. "Since when?" "Since the night I watched you break, and still push through for your daughter." Her defenses collapsed like paper. He rose from the floor and lifted her gently into his arms, laying her down against the pillows. Then he joined her, body warm and steady behind hers, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. "You're not alone in this, Callie," he said softly. "You have me." Tears slid silently down her cheek. "I'm scared. So am I. But fear doesn't get to make the decisions. We do." She turned to face him. "You don't even flinch." "I do. I just don't do it in front of the people I'm protecting." Callie buried her face in his chest, letting herself be wrapped in his strength. "I don't know how I ever lived without you." He kissed her hair. "You'll never have to again." They lay there in silence for minutes, minutes that felt like hours, wrapped in warmth and stillness. But as the night deepened, the stillness gave way to a different kind of need. Not rushed, not urgent, but unmistakable. Archie leaned down, brushed her lips with his. She returned the kiss, slow, exploratory, grounding. It wasn't about lust. It was about claiming peace in a world that kept threatening to steal it. He kissed her neck, her shoulder, her chest. She gasped, arching into him, and whispered, "I need you to remind me that I'm more than what he tried to take." He paused, held her face. "You are." Then he made love to her, slow and full of intention. No words, just breath, heartbeat, connection. When she came apart beneath him, she said his name like a prayer. And when he followed, he whispered into her ear, "You have me, Callie, for good." Later, wrapped in sheets, wrapped in him, she whispered, "If we lose in court." "We won't, but if we do?" He turned to her. "Then we fight again." Callie stirred awake to the soft creak of the nursery door. She blinked slowly, sunlight beginning to spill across the bed. The sheets beside her were empty, but warm. A faint baby coo drifted in from down the hallway. She wrapped the blanket around her and stepped into the corridor. Archie stood at the edge of Willow's crib, gently swaying as he rocked her. The baby's cheek rested against his shoulder, one tiny hand clutching the fabric of his white tee. He hadn't noticed Callie yet. She stood there, barefoot, watching, and for the first time in her life she saw what security looked like. Not money, not promises, but a man, in quiet morning light, rocking a child that wasn't biologically his, but loved like she was. When he finally turned, his eyes softened the moment he saw her. "She had a bad dream," he whispered. "Settled as soon as I picked her up." Callie stepped forward, heart full. "You're a natural." He looked down at Willow. "She's got me wrapped. I can't even pretend otherwise." Callie ran her fingers through her hair. "You didn't have to get up. I didn't think twice." He laid Willow back down in the crib with the kind of gentleness that made her chest ache. When he straightened, Callie was already in his think twice. He laid Willow back down in the crib with the kind of gentleness that made her chest ache. When he straightened, Callie was already in his arms. "Stay with me," she murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." They stood like that for a long time, bodies pressed together, hearts in sync. She looked up at him, still in his shirt, hair messy, no makeup, just her. And he couldn't look away. "I don't want a temporary love," she whispered. "I've had enough of people touching my body and leaving my soul untouched." Archie's hand cupped her jaw. "You think I touched just your body?" She exhaled, lips parted, eyes damp. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't the kind of kiss that asked, it claimed. Callie melted into him, her hand sliding beneath his shirt, fingertips pressed against his skin like she was memorizing the lines of his devotion. He lifted her again, carried her back to the bedroom, and this time it wasn't about urgency. It was about permanence. The sun climbed as they moved together in the sheets. Archie kissed every part of her like it was his to protect. She arched, whimpered, breathed his name. He took his time, watching every reaction, learning every sigh. When he finally pressed into her, she gasped, not because of the motion, but because of the emotion behind it. Slow, deep, unapologetic. She clutched his back, nails lightly scoring muscle as he rocked into her. "Archie," she whispered, voice cracking. "I know," he breathed. "I feel it too." She cried when she climaxed, an involuntary flood of release and safety. He followed moments later, holding her tightly, pressing his forehead to hers as he murmured, "You're mine, and I'm yours." They lay there tangled in sweat, skin, and emotion. Callie didn't speak at first. She just traced circles on his chest. "I want to believe this is forever," she said finally. He took her hand and kissed her palm. "Then let me show you." "How?" "By never leaving. Not when it's hard, not when it's messy, not when he tries to take what's ours." She closed her eyes. "You keep saying, ours." He kissed her temple. "Because that's what she is." Callie swallowed. "You really want to be her father?" He nodded. "In every way that matters." She rolled over, chest to chest, staring into his eyes. "Then let's fight. Together." He smiled. "That's all I've been waiting to hear." The courtroom was colder than expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Callie sat beside her attorney, dressed in a soft gray blouse and black slacks, her hands clasped in her lap. Her expression was calm, but her heartbeat thundered beneath her ribs. Across the aisle sat Damon, hair slicked, designer suit, a smug curl tugging at the corner of his mouth like he'd already won. Next to him, his lawyer, an older man with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, organized a thick file of documents, flipping through them like weapons waiting to be unsheathed. Archie sat 2 rows behind Callie, not because he wasn't allowed closer, but because this was her fight to lead. Still, he was there, always there. She didn't need to look back to know he hadn't taken his eyes off her. The judge entered. Everyone stood. "Be seated." The opening statements began. Damon's lawyer stood first, clearing his throat before addressing the court. "Your Honor, we are here because Mr. Damon Russell, biological father of the child in question, has been unjustly denied parental rights. The mother, Miss Callie Morgan, has acted irresponsibly by cohabitating with an unrelated man only weeks. After childbirth, exposing her infant to instability and emotional confusion." Callie stared forward, unmoved. The lawyer continued. "Miss Morgan has no full-time employment, minimal income, and until recently, no permanent residence. She is emotionally compromised and under the influence of a man who has no legal or biological connection to her daughter." He paused, letting the words hang in the air like poison. "Therefore, we request full legal custody be granted to Mr. Russell." Callie's attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, we will present a very different picture, one in which Mr. Russell abandoned Miss Morgan in active labor, one in which he emptied their joint account, filed for divorce without notice, and refused to visit the hospital at all after the child's birth." She gestured toward Callie. "This is not a woman running from responsibility. This is a mother who gave birth alone, raised her child with dignity, and rebuilt her life despite betrayal. She found shelter, employment, and support not through manipulation, but through the kindness of a man who did what Mr. Russell did not, stayed." The judge nodded. "Begin with testimony." Damon was called first. He walked with the swagger of a man who'd already rehearsed every word. "Mr. Russell," the attorney began, "were you present for your child's birth?" "No," Damon replied. "I had an emergency board meeting. I offered to return afterward, but Miss Morgan made it clear she didn't want me involved." Callie's nails bit into her palm. "And your financial contributions?" "I set up a joint account," he said smoothly. "She had full access. If the funds were gone, perhaps she misused them." Her attorney objected. "Misrepresentation of evidence." The judge raised a hand. "Sustained. Stick to facts, counsel." Damon continued. "Look, I made mistakes, but I'm her father. I deserve a second chance." The courtroom fell quiet. Callie's attorney stood. "Miss Morgan, please come forward." She rose slowly, every step to the stand a battle between fury and composure. Once sworn in, she looked at the judge directly. "Miss Morgan," her attorney said gently, "can you describe what happened the day your daughter was born?" Callie's voice didn't tremble. "He left." "Who?" She turned toward Damon. "My husband, Willow's father." "Did he explain why?" "He said labor wasn't his thing. Then he walked out, while I was 6 centimeters dilated." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. "Did he return at any point?" "No." "Did he offer financial support after?" "He emptied our savings. I received a divorce packet 2 days later." "Where did you go?" Callie's gaze moved across the room. "She found Archie. To someone who didn't owe me anything, but showed up anyway." The courtroom held its breath. Callie remained on the stand, hands resting in her lap. Her heart beat hard against her ribs, but her voice stayed even. The judge turned to her attorney. You may proceed. Miss Morgan, the lawyer said, can you share with the court why you believe it is in Willow's best interest to remain in your sole custody? Callie lifted her chin. When I was left in that hospital room in pain and fear, he didn't come back. Not hours later, not the next day, not ever. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Damon. He looked away. I screamed through contractions without anyone holding my hand. I brought a child into the world without the person who should have been there. But you know who did show up? She paused. The entire room leaned in. A doctor who wasn't even scheduled to be on call. A man who heard me screaming down a hallway and walked in, not because it was his job, but because it was right. Her voice tightened. He held my hand. He cut the cord. He wrapped my baby in his arms like she belonged to him. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't run a background check. He just stayed. She glanced at Archie. He didn't blink. Since that day, Archie Lewis has shown up to every feeding, every pediatrician appointment, every night Willow couldn't sleep. He didn't sign her birth certificate, but he signed on to be present. And presence is louder than blood. She looked directly at the judge now. This isn't about biology. This is about stability, consistency, love. My daughter doesn't cry when he holds her. She calms. She doesn't flinch when he enters the room. She reaches. Her hand shook, but her words didn't falter. You asked who Willow's father is. She looked toward Damon one more time. It's the man who stayed. Silence followed. No one moved. Even the clerk had stopped typing. Then the judge nodded. Thank you, Miss Morgan. Callie returned to her seat slowly. Her lawyer stood again. Your Honor, with your permission, we'd like to call one final witness. Proceed. The door at the back of the room opened. Archie Lewis stood and walked to the front with calm control. He took the stand, was sworn in, and met the courtroom with steady eyes. The attorney stepped forward. Dr. Lewis, what is your relationship to the child in question? I was the first person to hold her after she was born. And since then, I've fed her, bathed her, rocked her to sleep, read her stories, built her nursery. I know what she cries like when she's hungry. I know which lullaby works when she won't nap. I know which side she prefers to sleep on. In this very moment, love is not just a word, it's a rhythm, a twilight glow that binds us all. If this journey already speaks to your heart, pause for a second, like this video. Let the world know you feel it too. Tell me in the comments, what's your idea of true love under twilight skies? Every response lights up our community, and your story matters here. Subscribe and share this with someone who still believes in love's magic. His voice didn't rise, it deepened. I know her. The attorney nodded. Are you requesting legal guardianship? No. Gasps whispered through the room. I'm requesting legal adoption, Archie continued. I want to give her my last name. I want to be the father that man never became. I want to marry her mother and raise Willow as my daughter, not in name, but in every action that matters. The judge blinked slowly. You're asking this court to give you full legal rights to a child you didn't conceive? Yes. Why? Archie looked over at Callie, then back at the bench. Because love isn't measured by DNA. It's measured by who shows up. The judge's gavel tapped once, soft but commanding. We'll take a short recess, she said, rising from the bench. I'll return with the decision shortly. The room exhaled as she disappeared through the side door. Callie sat frozen, hands clenched in her lap. Archie returned to her side, gently resting his hand over hers. Their fingers interlaced, no words exchanged. Across the room, Damon looked far less confident than he had at the beginning of the hearing. His lawyer leaned in, whispering quickly, but Damon shook his head, eyes narrowed. Callie didn't look at him. She couldn't, not when every fiber of her soul was wrapped around what was to come. 15 minutes passed, then 20. The bailiff stood as the judge returned. Everyone rose. Be seated. The courtroom fell into silence again. The judge adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Callie. I've reviewed all testimony, documents, and witness accounts. She turned to Damon. Mr. Russell, while you are the child's biological father, your absence at the time of her birth, along with your financial abandonment and documented behavior, calls into question your fitness as a custodial parent. Damon's jaw flexed. The judge continued. Miss Morgan, you've demonstrated strength, stability, and an unwavering commitment to your daughter's well-being. The testimony provided paints a picture not of a struggling mother, but of a woman who rose in the face of betrayal. Callie's heart pounded. She looked at Willow's blanket folded neatly in her lap. Her thumb rubbed across it like a prayer. The judge turned to Archie. "Dr. Lewis." "Yes, Your Honor," he replied. "You've asked this court for the right to adopt a child not biologically yours, and to assume full responsibility in every legal and emotional sense. I have." "Why?" Archie didn't hesitate. "Because she deserves to grow up knowing what it feels like to be chosen." The judge nodded once. "Well said." She looked over her papers and then cleared her throat. "The court grants sole custody of the child, Willow Morgan, to her mother, Miss Callie Morgan. The adoption petition submitted by Dr. Archie Lewis will be moved to review, with a follow-up hearing scheduled within 30 days. However, this court sees no reason, based on the evidence provided, that such a petition would be denied." Callie gasped. Archie gripped her hand tighter. The judge's voice softened. "This courtroom rarely sees love spoken so clearly through action. I commend both of you." She tapped the gavel once more. "Court is adjourned." Cheers erupted from the back row where nurses and staff had shown up in silent support. Callie turned to Archie, eyes wide, full, trembling. He stood slowly. She stood too. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him, not soft, not uncertain, a full-bodied, head-spinning kiss that silenced every whisper in the room. Applause broke out. Even the clerk wiped at her eyes. When Callie pulled back, she smiled through her tears. "You just got permission to become her father." Archie pressed his forehead to hers. "No, sweetheart. I just got permission to become yours too." Sunlight poured through the nursery window, golden and soft like a blessing. Willow giggled from the floor, stacking blocks with determined chaos. Her tiny hands moved fast, knocking down towers as soon as they stood, just to start again. Callie sat by the crib, folding freshly laundered clothes, ones too, small now, replaced by bigger ones she never thought she'd afford. Her eyes were gentle, watching her daughter, full of peace. Behind her, quiet footsteps approached. Archie leaned in the doorway, hands tucked into his pockets, watching both girls like they were everything he never knew he needed. "You're staring," Callie said, not turning. "I'm memorizing," Archie replied. She smiled without looking up. "Need something?" He stepped in slowly. "I have something for you." Callie raised a brow, playful now. "Is it edible?" Archie chuckled. "Depends on how hungry you are for forever." Her hands paused. Then slowly, she looked up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black velvet box, simple, elegant, timeless. Her breath caught. He didn't kneel. Not yet. He walked to her and sat beside her on the floor, knees brushing. "I bought this the day after the custody hearing," he said softly. "But I waited." "Why?" she whispered. "Because I didn't want you to say yes just because I stood by you. I wanted you to say yes because you saw yourself with me, every day, every scar, every miracle." Callie's eyes brimmed. He opened the box. Inside sat a delicate rose gold band, shaped like a vine hugging a stone the color of autumn's sunrise. "It's her birthstone," Archie said, voice slightly shaking. "The same color your cheeks get when you laugh too hard." Callie laughed through tears. "You're impossible. I'm yours." He finally got on one knee, not in front of the world, not on a stage, just in a nursery, with baby blocks around him and the scent of powder in the air. "I want to grow old, with the sound of her laughter in my ears and the feel of your hand in mine. I want the hard days, the holidays, the diaper runs, the sleepless nights. With you." Callie covered her mouth. "Say yes," Archie whispered. "Not because we made it through pain, but because we're ready for joy." She didn't say yes. She launched into his arms. Their mouths found each other, deep, needing, claiming. Willow squealed, crawling over to them and slapping her palms against Archie's leg like a drum. Callie pulled back, laughing, and wiped her cheeks. "Yes," she finally said. "Yes, yes, and yes again." Archie kissed her forehead, then placed the ring gently on her finger. It fit like it had waited for her all its life. She looked down at it, then up at him. "Promise me," she whispered, "anything, that this peace, this love, it's real." He rested his forehead on hers. "It's not just real, Callie, it's permanent." The morning after the proposal arrived, wrapped in silence and golden light. The sheets were tangled, so were their limbs. Callie stirred first, eyes slowly blinking open to the sound of a steady heartbeat beneath her ear. Her cheek rested on Archie's chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her waist. Outside, birds called softly. Inside, the warmth of a promise still lingered. She didn't move, didn't want to, not when his hand drifted slowly across her bare back in soft, thoughtful circles, grounding her in a moment that felt like a dream they both earned. "You awake?" His voice rumbled above her. Maybe," she teased, her voice husky from sleep. "You said yes last night." She lifted her head to look at him, lips curving. "I did." Archie's eyes searched hers. "I need you to know I meant every word." She nodded. "I know. I felt it." He kissed her forehead gently, then her cheek, then moved down to the tip of her shoulder where a small freckle lived. She sighed as his lips moved with purpose, not lustful, but reverent. "I'm not used to this," she whispered. "To what?" "Being chosen without condition." Archie rolled to his side, fully facing her. "Well, get used to it," he said, fingers trailing down her arm. "Because this, us, there's no exit door." Callie's eyes glistened. "I used to wonder if I'd ever be seen." "You weren't just seen, Callie. You were found." They kissed again, deeper this time. His hands roamed her body with the confidence of a man who adored every inch. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. Their movements synced not in desperation, but in devotion. Skin on skin, heart on heart. When it slowed, when their breaths returned to normal, she rested against him again. And this time, he spoke softly. "I've never bought a house before." She looked up at him, surprised. "You, the doctor with 4 degrees and 2 condos?" He smirked. "Those weren't homes, they were crash pads. But now, I want walls that know your laugh. A kitchen where you hum to her while cooking. A hallway with scribbles on the wall from Willow's crayons." Callie blinked. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I want to build a life from scratch with you." Silence. Then her fingers curled into his chest. "Say it again," she breathed. "I want to build a life with you." She smiled, eyes glossy. Then yes. Again. The room smelled like rose petals and warm skin. Afternoon light spilled through the window in long golden streaks that painted the bed in softness. Time slowed inside those 4 walls, where promises weren't spoken loudly, but lived quietly in every breath shared between them. Archie lay on his side, propped up on an elbow, eyes tracing every contour of Callie's body as if committing it to memory. Her back was to him, the sheet draped across her lower half like silk-hugging sculpture. He didn't speak, didn't need to. He just reached out and placed his palm gently on the curve of her hip. His thumb moved in slow, deliberate strokes. Reverent, patient. Callie exhaled, spine arching faintly. "You're watching me again," she murmured. "I always am," he replied, voice husky. She rolled onto her back to face him, letting the sheet fall away. There was no shame in her eyes, only trust. He traced the outline of her collarbone, then dipped lower, gliding across the center of her chest with the back of his knuckles. Her breath caught. "I used to think no one would ever hold me without rushing," she whispered. Archie leaned down and kissed her sternum. "I'll never rush this," he said. "You're not a moment. You're my forever." She blinked fast. Then she pulled him into her, their mouths meeting like 2 halves of the same truth. His hand slid beneath her thigh and pulled her closer, as his lips kissed down her neck, across her shoulder. Then trailed lower, kissing along the swell of her breast, tracing her ribs, worshipping her belly. She moaned softly. "I want to memorize you," he said, voice shaking. "Every line, every sound you make, every way you respond to me." Callie whispered. "Then do it." He did. With his mouth, with his hands, with his breath against her most sensitive skin. He kissed behind her knees, bit gently at her inner thighs, held her. Hips, as if she might disappear if he didn't anchor her to the moment. And when he finally moved inside her, their eyes never broke contact. No rush, no performance, just pulse and promise. She clawed at his shoulders as waves of heat built between them. Her legs wrapped around his waist, holding him in place like her body knew this was the man it was built for. And when they reached that height together, she cried his name like a prayer, and he held her like one. After, they lay tangled, sweaty, breathless, spent, but not empty. Callie rested her head on his chest, her fingers splayed across the center of his heart. "I didn't know love could feel like this," she whispered. Archie kissed the top of her head. "It's not just love," he murmured. "It's choosing each other, even when the world doesn't." She closed her eyes, letting his heartbeat rock her into calm. Then softly, she said, "Can we make another promise? Anything. No matter what happens, job, money, storms. We don't shut down. We talk. Even when it's hard." Archie nodded slowly. "Then I vow this to you, Callie." He rolled slightly, cupping her face. "Even in anger, I will never let go of your hand." She choked on a breath. "Say it again," she whispered. "I will never let go of your hand." Callie smiled through her tears. And for the first time in years, she felt truly safe. The lake was silent, glass-like, so still it looked like the heavens had bent down to kiss its surface. Clouds gathered softly in the sky, the kind that hinted at a coming storm but hadn't yet decided when to fall. The breeze was gentle, brushing through the trees like fingers combing curls. And there, beneath an arch of twisted vines and wildflowers, Callie stood barefoot. In the grass, her veil fluttering behind her like a whispered dream. She didn't wear white. She wore a soft gold, like the sun had melted across her skin and cooled into fabric. It hugged her curves with reverence, flowing around her ankles as she looked out over the water. Archie watched her from a distance, heart pounding. He had seen her in every state, furious, broken, sweaty, glowing, giggling at 2 a.m, and dead silent with sadness. But nothing had ever undone him like this. She turned slowly, and her eyes locked with his. Neither of them smiled at first. They just breathed, deep, slow, measured, as if anchoring themselves in each other's presence. When Archie finally approached, he didn't walk fast. He took his time. Each step toward her felt like shedding every version of himself he'd worn for others. By the time he reached her, he wasn't the polished surgeon, the brooding CEO, or the boy his father wanted him to be. He was just hers. He reached for her hand. She gave it without hesitation. "You came," she whispered. "I'd come through fire." The officiant stood quietly a few feet away. No pulpit, no aisle, just nature as their witness. Friends and family sat in folding chairs under a cluster of oak trees, hushed by the intimacy of the moment. But for Callie and Archie, no one else existed. "Why here?" she asked, voice trembling. He glanced around at the water, the sky, the low-hanging mist curling at the lake's edge. "Because the storm will come," he said. "But this is where I want to make our promises, with wind on our backs, water behind us, and nothing but truth in front of us." Callie swallowed hard. "I used to dream of a ballroom," she admitted, "of chandeliers and violins. And now," she leaned closer, "I want veils caught in wind, vows over waves, and you." The officiant cleared his throat gently, then began. But neither Archie nor Callie looked away from each other. As the words began, "We are gathered here." The wind picked up slightly, teasing her veil so it danced between them. Archie reached out to tame it, brushing it back over her shoulder with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "I never believed in fate," he said under his breath. "But I do now." The officiant continued. "Marriage is not the soft surrender of self, but the bold declaration that you are ready to grow, together, through tempests and triumph, through days when silence feels safer, and nights when love is loud." Callie's eyes watered. And still, she didn't blink, because she didn't want to miss a second of this. "Do you, Archie Lewis, take Callie Grace Morgan to be your wife, your equal, your safe harbor, and your wild shore?" Archie didn't answer immediately. He stepped in closer, took both her hands, and looked at her like a man who had found his whole future in the eyes of a woman who once thought she'd never be enough. "I take you," he said, "and I will keep taking you every day. Even on the days you can't take yourself." Callie gasped softly. Tears broke loose. The officiant turned to her. "And do you, Callie Grace Morgan, take Archie Lewis to be your husband, your anchor, your light in shadow, and your fire in stillness?" She nodded too quickly. "I do," she breathed. "And I will keep doing, especially when it's hard, especially when we're tired, and even when I forget how to say it out loud." The storm finally spoke. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A hush swept through the guests. And yet the lake remained still. The officiant smiled and said, "Then seal your vow." Archie leaned in slowly. Their lips met with the weight of sacred intent, not rushed, not performative, just deep and long and certain. The veil blew over his shoulder as he cupped her face. Her hands buried in his lapels. They didn't hear the applause, didn't see the people standing, clapping, wiping tears. The kiss lingered, and when they finally broke apart, Callie whispered something only he could hear. "You're my home," and he replied, "Forever." They walked back down the soft grass as man and wife, and as they passed the lake, the first raindrop fell, right on her shoulder, then another, then another. They both laughed, high, breathless, beautiful. Archie pulled her into his arms as people ran for cover, and they stood alone. In the rain, forehead to forehead, veils soaked, hair damp, hearts exposed. "Looks like your storm arrived," she said, smiling. He tilted her chin up with one finger. "And we're still standing," she nodded, then pulled him in for another kiss. Because if rain was their blessing, then love had never been more alive. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but it left everything glistening, trees dripping with silver, grass heavy with moisture, and the petals of Callie's bouquet sparkling like they'd been kissed by stars. The guests were ushered inside the lakeside glass pavilion. Candlelight flickered from hundreds of pillars placed at different heights. Across the room, casting warm amber shadows against the wet windows, and in the center, beneath a suspended canopy of golden leaves and white roses, Callie stood, barefoot, radiant, and now someone's wife. But not just anyone's. Archie's. And Archie, standing beside her in his black suit with the collar undone in his hand, wrapped around hers, looked at her like she wasn't just a woman. She was the vow itself. But it wasn't the kiss, the ceremony, or the whispers of thunder still grumbling across the distant sky that made the moment holy. It was the tiny girl toddling toward them in her bare feet, Willow, in a dress made of chiffon and dreams, her soft curls crowned with tiny pearls. The little girl held a single flower in her hand, a peony almost as big as her head. She didn't walk straight. She wobbled, but her eyes were laser-locked on Callie. "Mama," she said, and the entire pavilion inhaled at once. Callie bent to one knee, dress puddling around her. Tears, unashamed and pure, streamed down her face as she opened her arms. "Come to me, baby," she whispered. Willow flung herself forward, straight into her mother's embrace, and that's when the crown came out. It wasn't gold. It wasn't jeweled. It was made of wildflowers, woven with soft sage and eucalyptus, hand-crafted that. Mourning by Archie himself, while everyone else thought he was gone preparing vows. He stepped forward now, gently, reverently. He placed it on Willow's curls, and then a second one, smaller still, meant for Callie's head. He placed it there with a smile so soft it could melt the entire room. Callie looked up at him from her knees, Willow nestled against her chest. "You crowned us," she whispered. "You were always royalty," he said. "I just finally saw it." The officiant, who had returned with a dry book and a warmer tone, lifted his voice once more. "We don't just marry individuals here," he said. "We marry stories, and yours has a third heartbeat." Everyone turned toward Willow, who was now gripping Callie's curls and chewing on a petal. Chuckles echoed gently around the room. But the emotion was tangible, the kind that stuck to your ribs. Archie bent beside them both, on one knee now, in front of his daughter and his wife. He took Willow's hand. "Willow Grace," he said softly, "do you accept me into your world?" She blinked slowly, then reached for his nose and booped it with her flower. Callie laughed through her tears. "I think that's a yes," she whispered. Then Archie turned to Callie. But this time, he didn't offer a standard vow. He placed his hand flat over her belly, still soft from motherhood, still marked from life. "I vow," he said, "to love every inch of the woman who birthed my future. I vow to show Willow what it looks like when a man worships one woman for life. I vow to never let her question her worth, because she will have seen it reflected in how I treat her mother. And I vow to never let you go back to surviving. You are meant to be adored, Callie, and I will do it, every single day." The room was no longer silent. People wept. Women held their chests. Men blinked fast and stared at the ceiling. Callie couldn't even stand. She threw her arms around his neck. Their crowns collided, and Archie pulled her into his lap, holding both her and Willow like they were the only treasures that ever mattered. The officiant cleared his throat gently. "Then by the power vested in me, and by the unshakable love already living between you, I bless this family." Thunder boomed again. But this time, it wasn't an interruption. It was applause from heaven. Later that night, as the guests toasted and the lanterns floated over the lake like stars, Archie and Callie slipped away. Not far, just outside, to the balcony wrapped around the pavilion. The storm had moved on, but its breath still lingered in the air, cool, electric, full of promise. Archie pressed her back gently against the stone rail, his arms caging her in. Callie tilted her chin up. "What now?" she asked. He leaned in. "Now I kiss my wife." And he did, with every vow, every year of longing, every broken piece finally made whole. His hands slid around her waist, fingers grazing the base of her spine. Her lips parted as she melted into him, arms slipping around his neck, pulling him impossibly closer. Their crowns tilted again, but neither noticed. Only the moan Callie swallowed back when his lips found the curve of her neck. The slow exhale when he whispered against her ear, "Thank you for saving me." She pulled back just far enough to meet his eyes. "No, Archie, you were the storm. I was just the one who stood still long enough to let you rain." He groaned softly, low, aching, then kissed her again. This time, with fire. She gasped as his thigh pressed between hers, the night folding around them like a curtain. Candlelight from inside flickered through the glass, casting their silhouettes in golden shadow. But they didn't care who saw. Because love like theirs wasn't meant to be hidden. It was meant to be declared, just like this night. The guests were gone. The lights inside the pavilion dimmed to a warm glow. Outside, the lake lay silent, black and smooth like a sheet of obsidian. The last of the lanterns floated across its surface, little flickers of fire drifting toward the edge of night. Archie and Callie remained, alone now. Her hand still rested in his. Their wedding rings caught the low light, reflections dancing across their joined fingers. But it wasn't over, not yet. Callie turned to face him fully, barefoot on the cold stone floor, the hem of her dress damp and trailing behind her. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears this time, but something deeper, something hungry. She stepped in close, chest brushing his. Her fingers rose and slowly unfastened the top button of his shirt, then the next. Archie didn't move, didn't speak. He watched her like a man surrendering to something sacred. And when she pushed the fabric aside to reveal the chest she had kissed before, marked with strength, vulnerability, and the heat of tonight's promises, he shivered, just once. Callie pressed her palm against his heart. "I want to feel it," she whispered. Archie's voice was a low rasp. "It's yours." And then, she kissed him, not a polite kiss, not a wedding day kiss. This was the kiss that rewrote the laws of what it meant to be touched. Her lips claimed his. Archie's arms wrapped around her waist with instinct, lifting her effortlessly off the floor. She gasped against his mouth as he turned, carrying her toward the inner chamber at the back of the pavilion, past candlelight, past the altar, into the shadowed room lined with velvet drapes and the scent of night-blooming jasmine. When he set her down, she was breathless. Their foreheads touched. "I need tonight to last," she whispered. He shook his head. "No," he said softly. "Tonight will start everything." She smiled, then kissed him again. And this time, it was slow. His hands found her shoulders, slipping the straps of her dress down until they pooled at her elbows. Her skin shivered beneath the trail of his fingers. Her collarbone rose and fell with each breath. His lips followed his hands, first at her shoulder, then her neck, then the hollow between her breasts. Callie's hands fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, desperate, trembling. She cursed under her breath, making him chuckle, but he silenced her with another kiss, his fingers, replacing hers, undoing each one with patient hunger until the shirt fell away completely. She slid her hands across his chest, nails grazing the curves of his muscles. "I dreamed of this," she said. He leaned down, lips at her ear. So did I. Clothes fell like whispers. Skin touched skin like poetry. And when he finally lay her down onto the silk sheets, the room fell into holy silence. Archie kissed her with reverence, every inch of her, every curve, every scar, every story. And Callie, she let him. Not because she belonged to him, but because she finally believed she was worthy of this kind of worship. The kind where nothing rushed. The kind where every moan was a prayer. The kind where love was not only spoken, it was made. They moved in rhythm, slow, aching, perfect. Hands gripping, lips tasting, eyes never leaving each other. And when she arched beneath him, whispering his name like it was the only word she remembered, he held her tighter. Like a man protecting the most precious thing he'd ever been given. Like a man who would never let go again. They lay in the aftermath, Skin slick, hearts thundering, legs tangled like vines beneath the sheets. Callie traced lazy circles across his chest, her voice nothing but a sleepy murmur. "I've never been touched like that," she said. Archie turned his head, brushing his lips against her temple. "That wasn't just touch," he whispered. "That was forever." Outside, the storm was gone, but the heat between them hadn't faded. She kissed his shoulder. He kissed her wrist. And in the quiet, just before they drifted into sleep, Callie whispered, "One more kiss?" Archie smiled. "Always." And then he kissed her. Again, and again, and again, because some nights should never end, and some kisses are meant to echo into eternity. The morning after the wedding broke with a strange kind of silence. No birds sang. No wind stirred the curtains. The lake outside shimmered with a glassy stillness, too calm to be real. Inside the villa, Callie stirred beneath soft linens, her bare back warm against Archie's chest. His arm wrapped around her waist, holding her like something he never wanted to lose again. For a moment the world felt still, safe. But storms never ask for permission before they return. And this one had unfinished business. A phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once. Twice. Callie didn't stir. Archie did. He reached for the device, careful not to wake her. His brows furrowed the moment he read the caller ID. Dr. Nolan. Not a name that usually brought urgency, unless something was wrong. Archie slipped out of bed, kissed Callie's temple, and padded barefoot to the balcony. He answered in a low voice. "Nolan?" The voice on the other end didn't waste time. "Archie, we need to talk. Now. There's been..." Something came up, about Callie's last scans and Willow's blood work. Archie stiffened. "What do you mean?" "There's a possibility, a genetic marker, something that didn't show up before." His grip tightened on the phone. "Be clear, Nolan. What are you saying?" But the line was already crackling. A gust of wind howled from nowhere and cut the call. Archie stared at the phone, then back at the lake. The sky had turned. A shift in the wind. A flicker of lightning. Somewhere, thunder rolled like a beast waking from sleep. The storm was coming back. By the time Callie awoke, Archie had already dressed. His shirt was half-buttoned, his jaw clenched. He paced across the living room, phone pressed to his ear, trying Nolan again. Callie sat up, the sheet clutched around her. "Archie." He turned, startled, then softened, but not fully. "Not today. I didn't mean to wake you," he said gently. "You didn't. What's going on?" He crossed to her and knelt at the edge of the bed, taking her hands. "There might be a complication," he said. "With what?" He hesitated. "With Willow." The name dropped like a stone in her chest. Callie sat up straighter, the air leaving her lungs. "What kind of complication?" "I don't know yet." Nolan tried to explain, but the call dropped. He mentioned a marker, something genetic. Callie's eyes widened. No, Archie. She's been fine. You saw her labs last week. Everything was stable." "I know," he said. "And it could still be nothing. But I need to know for sure." Callie's voice trembled. "Where is she now?" "With my mother. At the estate. Safe. I want to go there, right now." Archie nodded. "I already called for the car." She moved to get up, then stopped. "What if it's something serious?" she asked, voice barely audible. He stood and reached for her. His hands cupped her face, steady and warm. "Then we face it, together." Callie nodded, but her heart had already dropped into a darker place. The drive to the estate was fast, the Rolls-Royce cutting through the rising wind as rain began to splatter the windows. The trees along the road bent like they remembered this storm, like it had returned to finish what it started. Neither of them spoke much. Callie stared at the sky, chewing her lip. Archie's hands never left the wheel. When they arrived, the staff greeted them in solemn silence. Mrs. Lewis, Archie's mother, met them in the hall. "She's upstairs," she said softly. "Sleeping. But she had a mild fever this morning. I didn't want to panic you." Callie rushed up the steps before another word could be said. Inside the nursery, Willow lay curled in a sea of plush toys, her tiny form wrapped in a pink blanket. Her breathing was light. Too light. Callie sat beside her, brushing hair from her daughter's brow. She was warm. Archie stood in the doorway. The doctor arrived within minutes, bags in hand. face tight with quiet concern. "Dr. Nolan." He gave a nod, his gaze moving between Archie and Callie. "I didn't want to alarm you," he began, "but I flagged something in Willow's metabolic panel. Her red blood count is dropping, and she's showing signs of a rare deficiency." Callie looked up sharply. "What kind of deficiency?" "An enzyme. One only passed through paternal lineage in very specific cases. It's rare, treatable, if caught early, but it suggests a deeper recessive gene that didn't show on the initial panel." Archie's jaw flexed. "So what's next?" "Further testing. Immediately. We'll take her to the pediatric center downtown. I've already arranged for a specialist." Callie held Willow tighter. "I'm going with her," she said. Archie nodded. "So am I." But Dr. Nolan hesitated. "There's one more thing," he said carefully. Callie stood, Willow in her arms. "What?" "The gene. It's aggressive in rare adult onset cases, and the last scan you did, Callie, it showed faint echoes. There's a possibility it's affecting you too." The silence broke everything. Archie stepped forward, his breath stolen. "No," he whispered. "You said she was healthy. You said—" "I said it was possible," Nolan replied. "Not confirmed. But we need more scans, soon." Callie's grip on her daughter trembled. Thunder cracked again, this time so loud it rattled the glass. Back in the car, Willow nestled between them in a protective carrier. Callie leaned against Archie's shoulder. "I don't care what the tests say," she whispered. "She's strong. I'm strong. I know. But if something happens—" He turned to her, voice fierce. "Nothing will. You hear me? But if it does, promise me you'll raise her with your heart." He touched her face, kissed her lips with urgency. "No, don't say if. Say when we get through this. When we walk out stronger. When she's running in that garden again." Callie tried to believe it, tried to wrap her pain in his hope. But when the sky cracked open again and the first bolt of lightning lit the clouds, in jagged white, a cold truth slid through her. Some storms don't return to end you. They return to test if you've learned how to survive. The hospital room was dim, painted in a quiet beige that tried too hard to be calming. But the air inside wasn't calm. It was heavy, with what-ifs, with waiting, with fear. Willow slept in the pediatric suite down the hall, IV drip attached to her tiny wrist. Machines hummed and blinked with steady rhythms, a cruel reminder of how fragile miracles could be. Callie sat on the bed, still in her silk dress from the night before, her fingers gripping the edge of the sheet like it could anchor her to something, anything. Archie stood by the window, back straight, hands in fists, jaw tight. The storm outside still raged, lightning flashing behind his silhouette like a battle sky. The silence between them stretched, until he turned, walked over, and dropped to his knees in front of her. "I need you to listen to me," he said, voice quiet but fierce. "You don't get to talk like it's over. You don't get to act like I'm going to lose you." Her throat tightened. "Archie." "No." He placed both palms on her thighs, steady and grounding. His gaze climbed up her body, not with lust, but with possession. "With promise. You're Callie Lewis now," he said. "Not just by name, by soul, by fire. You belong to me, and I belong to you. So don't you dare think for 1 second that I'll let anything take you away from me." Her breath hitched. Tears filled her eyes, but not from fear this time. From the way he looked at her, like even the storm couldn't touch her if he held her tight enough. He pushed the straps of her dress down, inch by inch, until they slid over her arms and dropped to her lap. His lips trailed behind them, along her shoulder, then her collarbone and lower still. Callie gasped, arching forward. "Archie." He looked up at her, eyes dark and burning. "You're mine," he growled. "Say it." "I'm yours." He kissed her hard, a desperate, possessive kiss that left no room for doubt. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as he lifted her, off the bed and laid her back, climbing over her like a man starved. They didn't ask permission. They didn't pause. Their bodies already knew the rhythm. His hand slid beneath the silk, found heat, found her, open and ready, trembling beneath his touch. Callie moaned, legs parting instinctively, drawing him deeper into the moment. He kissed down her stomach, worshipping every inch like it was sacred. Because to him, it was. "I'm going to remind you who you are," he whispered. And then he did, with lips, with tongue, with fingers, until her back arched off the bed, her cry echoing into the ceiling. But he didn't stop. Not until she collapsed beneath him, panting, flushed, utterly unraveled. When he finally entered her, slow and deep, their eyes locked, and the world disappeared. Every thrust was a vow, every kiss a promise, every moan a declaration of war against fate. "You stay with me," he breathed. "I will," she choked. "You fight." "I will. You're Callie Lewis, my wife, my everything." She held his face, her thumbs brushing away the tears he didn't know he shed. "I'm yours. Always." They moved together until neither of them could speak, until the only language left was skin and breath and the kind of love that outlives storms. When it was over, they lay tangled in sweat and silk and the scent of each other. Archie pressed his lips to her forehead. "I don't care what those tests say. I don't care what we're up against. I'll burn down this entire world before I let it take you." She smiled through tears. "You won't have to. I'm not leaving. I've waited too long for this. For you. For Willow. For this life." Lightning cracked again, but this time it felt like applause, because some storms weren't sent to destroy. Some storms were sent to prove what deserved to survive. And tonight, they both knew. They were going to survive everything, together. The sun peeked through the gray, fractured clouds that had loomed over the city for days. It was the kind of dawn that didn't just light the sky, it broke it open. Inside the hospital room, the silence had changed. It no longer carried dread. It hummed with quiet relief, the kind that only comes after surviving something unthinkable. Callie stirred, the sheets tangled around her waist, her bare back kissed by soft morning light. Archie lay beside her, propped on one elbow, watching her sleep, watching her breathe. He had spent so many nights chasing wealth, dominance, control, yet here, he was still, utterly conquered by the rise and fall of her chest. She blinked awake slowly, lips curved with the ghost of a smile. Her hand slid across the bed until it found his chest. "You're staring again," she murmured. "I earned the right," he replied, voice deep and tender. "I almost lost you." She turned toward him, her eyes no longer heavy with exhaustion. "But you didn't." Archie traced a fingertip along the curve of her cheek. "I don't want to sleep anymore unless you're beside me. I don't want another morning without this." "This," she teased, curling against him, pressing her lips to his neck. "This, everything," he whispered. "You, Willow, the late-night arguments, the early morning kisses, the fights, the forgiveness, all of it. I want it all." A knock tapped gently at the door. Dr. Keene stepped in, clipboard in hand, her white coat fluttering like a flag of truth. Archie immediately sat up, instinct taut. Callie reached for his hand. Dr. Keene smiled, but it wasn't her usual polite curve. It was warm, hopeful. "The scans came back," she said, eyes dancing between the two of them. "And I don't say this often, but miracles still exist." Callie gasped, gripping Archie's hand tighter. "You're in the clear, Callie. No further complications. The surgery worked. You're going to be okay." The words hit like a thunderclap, and then melted. Callie sobbed, chest shaking as Archie pulled her into him, burying his face in her hair. They didn't thank the doctor with words. They thanked her with the silence of survival. When the room emptied, Callie tilted her head back and whispered, "Can we see her?" Minutes later, they stood beside Willow's crib in the pediatric wing. The toddler stirred, blinking up at them with sleepy eyes and a smile that looked like both of theirs. "Mama," she said. Callie wept, scooping her up into trembling arms. Archie leaned down, kissing their daughter's forehead. Everything they had survived, every betrayal, every secret, every storm, suddenly seemed like a path leading here. To this. Later, in the quiet of their suite, Archie ran a bath. He helped Callie into the warm water settling behind her, his arms wrapped around her as the steam rose. She leaned into him, skin against skin, heart to heart. "You know," she whispered, "I didn't believe in forever. Not until you—" He kissed her shoulder. "I didn't believe in second chances. Not until you—" Their bodies found rhythm again, not hurried, not ravenous, but reverent. This wasn't hunger. It was communion. Archie moved inside her like a man returning home. Their breaths synced, their hearts quieted, and as the morning light spilled across the tile floor, Callie whispered, "We survived." He kissed her lips like it was a ceremony, and replied, "No, my love. We've only just begun." The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like thunder, the scent of possibility, of promises kept, of new beginnings finally unwrapped. From the balcony of their home, yes, their home now, Callie stood barefoot in a silk robe, watching the clouds retreat. Willow, now 3.5, spun in slow circles behind her, tiny feet slapping joyfully against the wet marble tiles. "Careful, baby," Callie said, half laughing, half tearful. "Mama, I'm dancing with the storm," Willow called back, arms stretched wide like she could catch the sky in her palms. Callie's heart pulsed with an ache she'd never known before motherhood. Fierce, fragile love. From the living room behind her, Archie appeared, his white shirt rolled at the sleeves, black slacks hanging loose around his hips. His wedding band caught a glint of the sun that peeked through the remaining clouds. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched the two women who had undone him, who had made him. Callie turned to him with a quiet smile. "You remember the first time she smiled?" He stepped beside her, arms sliding around her waist. "In the NICU. She was so tiny I was scared to breathe near her. And then she looked at me and—" "She smiled," Callie whispered, like she already knew she'd saved us both. They stood in silence, the sound of Willow's laughter echoing off the walls. Archie leaned in, pressing his lips against her temple. "I want to take her somewhere," he said. "Just us three. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere the world can't reach." Callie looked up at him, her voice soft. "Do you even know what quiet looks like?" He chuckled. "I do now. It looks like Sunday mornings with you in my shirt and her on my chest." She smiled, then leaned against him. "Let's do it." 3 weeks later, a lake house nestled in the folds of Oregon's forest cradled their new rhythm. No assistants, no boardrooms, no press, just wind, pine, and the kind of silence that made love louder. Willow ran barefoot on the wooden dock each morning, chasing dragonflies and calling them winged kisses. Callie cooked in the mornings while Archie chopped wood, and in the evenings, she painted with her daughter while he read poetry aloud like lullabies. Every day, they healed a little more. Every night, they held each other tighter. But on the 11th evening, a summer thunderstorm rolled in. Loud, bold, unapologetic. Willow screamed at the thunder's first crack, running into her parents' arms. Archie picked her up, whispering, "It's okay, little bird. The clouds are just talking." She buried her head in his neck. Callie lit a lantern and led them to the porch where the storm could be watched but not feared. They wrapped Willow in a blanket between them. Rain tapped the roof like a gentle song, and lightning illuminated their faces in flashes. And then, Callie laughed, out loud, belly deep, eyes closed. Archie looked at her, stunned. "I used to be so afraid of storms," she said, her voice warm. "But now, they sound like us. Chaotic," he teased. "Alive," she replied. "Loud, honest, healing." Willow looked up at them both. "I like storms now." Archie pulled her close. "That's my brave girl." She beamed. "Can we dance in it?" Callie blinked. "Right now?" Willow nodded. Archie was already rising. "We'll all catch a cold," Callie warned. "We'll catch memories," Archie said, lifting Willow into his arms and stepping into the soft rain. Callie hesitated at the porch edge, but only for a heartbeat. Then, barefoot, laughing, drenched in light and love, she joined them. The three of them danced in the downpour. Willow spun, squealing. Archie dipped Callie, kissing her mid-spin. She laughed into his mouth. "You're insane." "I'm in love," he replied. The rain clung to their skin, their clothes, their souls. But they didn't run inside. They danced until the thunder stopped, until Willow's yawns pulled them in, until the storm passed, not just from the sky, but from their lives. Later that night, Willow snuggled between them in bed. Rain still kissed the windows. Callie turned to Archie. "She's everything we didn't know we needed." He nodded. "And everything we'll never let go." They lay in silence again, but this time it was full. Full of the laughter they'd shared, the storms they'd survived, the vow they'd remade under fire, under light, under love. Callie placed a hand over Archie's heart, then over Willow's back, then over her own belly, and whispered, "Maybe she won't be alone for long." Archie's breath caught, his eyes locked with hers, and in the space between heartbeats, the thunder whispered one last truth: love always returns where it's planted. Autumn crept in slowly, like a blessing that didn't want to startle anyone. The lake house's trees had turned into flames of gold and crimson, and the wind now hummed lullabies through the shutters. Inside, laughter had replaced the old silence. Callie sat on the porch wrapped in a caramel shawl, her feet propped on Archie's lap. Her belly now showed, the curve of new life growing where pain once lived. Archie kissed her ankle absent-mindedly as he read aloud from the baby book she insisted they complete together. Favorite lullaby? He read. Callie smirked. Easy. Willow humming to herself in the bathtub. Archie wrote it down, tongue poking the corner of his mouth like he always did when concentrating. She watched him for a moment, then said, "You look younger these days." He looked up. "That's because I stopped carrying my mistakes, like they defined me." She leaned forward and touched his face. "You were never broken, Archie, just unfinished." He caught her hand and pressed it against his chest. "Then you completed me." Willow burst through the front door before Callie could say more, her curls wild, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of childhood. "Mama, Papa, come quick." They stood and followed her barefoot feet across the front yard, past the orchard Archie planted, to the white swing Archie built just for her. There, a small bunny sat quietly in the grass. Willow crouched beside it, whispering nonsense lullabies and cradling it like a secret. Archie chuckled. "You've inherited your mother's heart, sweetheart." Willow looked up. "Then I'm gonna love forever." Callie's eyes shimmered. And just like that, love wasn't just something they survived. It was something they taught. That night, as the fireplace cracked in their bedroom, Archie lay curled around Callie, his hand resting over the baby growing beneath her skin. "I never thought peace could feel like this," he whispered. She tilted her head back. "You earned it. We both did." He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I've been thinking of selling the company." Callie turned slowly. "What?" "I built that empire from pain, from ego, from trying to control everything because I was afraid to feel anything." His voice didn't shake. "Now I want to build something different, something for us." Callie smiled slowly. "So, what would you do? Buy land, grow things, teach Willow how to build with her hands, maybe write a book, definitely make you breakfast every morning, and maybe, just maybe, keep making babies until this house is too small." She laughed, soft and long. "You're serious?" "I am. I want to be a full-time husband, a full-time father, a full-time man who knows what matters." Callie stared into his eyes, then whispered, "Then let's do it. Let's write a different legacy." 2 years later, the house had grown louder, warmer. The family had grown larger. Willow now ran barefoot through fields of lavender with her baby brother strapped to her back in a colorful sling. Callie painted in the mornings, her fingers streaked with wild color. Archie wrote beside her, books of healing, of masculinity remade, of what it meant to let softness be strength. Their land became a sanctuary for others. Women came who had left broken marriages. Fathers came who wanted to start over. Children came who needed to see a home that didn't shout or shake. And every Sunday, under the wide oak tree behind the house, Archie read love letters to Callie aloud. Even the neighbors came to listen. They called it the revival hour. And every week, Willow stood beside them, holding her little brother's hand, and smiling like she knew the world had almost lost this story, but didn't. One evening, while rocking the baby to sleep, Callie whispered something into his tiny ear. Archie watched from the doorway. He waited. And when she tucked the child in, he walked toward her slowly and asked, "What did you say to him?" She looked at him through candlelight and said, "I told him our family wasn't built in peace. It was forged in fire. But fire doesn't just burn, Archie. It creates." She slid her arms around his neck. "And we were not broken. We were reborn." He kissed her like the first time, and the last time, and every time in between. At sunrise the next day, Callie wrote something in her journal and left it open on the porch. It said, "Let the world say what it wants. We were not perfect. We were not planned. But we were real, and real love survives fire. It rebuilds, reclaims, redefines." My name is Callie Lewis. His name is Archie Lewis, and our daughter's name is Willow, because after the storm, something must grow. There was a rhythm to the land now, a heartbeat. Each day the sun rose like a hymn across the fields, and in the golden light of morning, a family moved in harmony, without rush, without noise, just love, stitched into every motion. Callie stirred honey into Willow's tea at the kitchen window, while Archie chased their toddler son, Caleb, across the front porch. Laughter echoed like wind chimes. Willow was 5 now. Too curious, too bold, too full of wonder for her tiny frame. "Papa, she yelled, running to him. Caleb tried to eat a worm again. Archie scooped his son up and spun him gently in the air. "Buddy, we've talked about this. Worms are not breakfast." Callie chuckled from the doorway. "Let him learn. That's how you build an immune system." "You're turning into your mother," Archie said, eyes dancing. "And you're turning into the man I married after the storm," she replied. He kissed her forehead. "Best decision we ever made." She smiled. "Second best." He raised an eyebrow. First was keeping Willow, who now twirled barefoot in the soil, humming a tune she'd made up just that morning. Her curls bounced with every spin. Her joy was ferocious, and her presence, her existence, was the legacy. That evening, the family gathered outside under strings of warm light. A wooden table sat in the orchard, lined with mason jars, baked apples, roasted vegetables, and Callie's famous peach cobbler. They weren't alone. Over the years, their story had quietly invited others. The once isolated lake house had become a haven for people who'd been told they weren't enough. Now former strangers shared bread like family. Mothers without partners. Fathers trying to start again. Children learning what stability felt like. And in the center of it all sat Callie and Archie, hands interlaced, eyes soft. Willow stood on a little bench at the head of the table, holding a small paper in her hand. "I wrote a poem," she announced. "It's about love." A hush fell. Archie reached for Callie's hand again. Her grip tightened. Willow cleared her throat. Once, there was a mama and a storm. She was strong, but sad. Then the wind brought her a daddy with a broken heart, and the stars gave them a baby with sunlight hair. Then they danced in the rain and forgot how to be alone. Everyone clapped. Callie wiped her cheeks with the corner of a napkin. Archie pressed his mouth to her knuckles. "This is our forever," he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, after the guests had gone, and the children had fallen asleep in a cuddle pile of stuffed animals and warm blankets, Callie and Archie sat on the back porch with glasses of red wine. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, and for a moment, the world was still. No past, no regrets, just them. "I want to name the foundation after her," Archie said suddenly. Callie looked at him. "The Willow Foundation," he continued. "A place for women who were left, abandoned, afraid. Just like you were once." Callie's eyes filled. "And like you were once, too." He nodded. "We survived, and now we help others do more than just survive. We help them bloom." They clinked glasses. That night, love didn't need words. It lived in the silence between sips, in the brush of fingers, in the rise and fall of breaths. And in the future they were building together, one healed heart at a time. 6 months later, at a newly renovated shelter downtown, a plaque was unveiled. It read, "The Willow Foundation for the mother with trembling hands, for the child who never knew peace, for the father who thinks it's too late. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are not broken. Love found us. It will find you too." Founded by Archie and Callie Lewis, there were tears. There were hugs. And in the front row, Willow held Caleb's hand as she whispered, "Mama says love is what you do." Back home that night, Willow crawled into their bed. She nestled between her parents, her voice sleepy but sure. "Are we a real family, Mama?" Callie kissed her curls. "The realest, even if we started wrong?" Archie spoke then. "Baby girl, what matters isn't how a story starts." He looked at Callie. "It's how it ends." Callie smiled. "And our story isn't ending. It's just beginning," Willow finished. They lay like that for a while. 3 hearts touching. The woman who survived abandonment. The man who rose from failure. The child who brought them back to life. And the whisper in Callie's belly of more love to come. A family. Not perfect, but permanent. Every story deserves a moment that lingers, and that's what Love and Twilight is all about. If you felt the spark in today's journey, don't let it fade. Hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, and join our growing circle where hearts connect and stories shine. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What moment touched you most? Your voice fuels the twilight of love we create together. Share this with someone who believes in love's magic. Stay close, because the next chapter might just be your story.